Episode 183. Harry closed his eyes. If he had not gone to save Sirius, Sirius would not have died. More to stave off the moment when he would have to think of Sirius again, Harry asked, without caring much about the answer. The end of the prophecy. It was something about neither can live while the other survives, said Dumbledore. So, said Harry, dredging up the words from what felt like a deep well of despair inside him. So does that mean that one of us has got to kill the other one in the end? Yes, said Dumbledore. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Somewhere far beyond the office walls, Harry could hear the sound of voices. Students heading down to the great hall for an early breakfast, perhaps. It seemed impossible that there could be people in the world who still desired food, who laughed, who neither knew nor cared that Sirius Black was gone forever. Sirius seemed a million miles away already, even if a part of Harry still believed that if he had only pulled back that veil, he would have found Sirius looking back at him, greeting him perhaps with his laugh like a bark. I feel I owe you another explanation, Harry, said Dumbledore hesitantly. You may perhaps have wondered why I never chose you as a prefect. I must confess that I rather thought you had enough responsibility to be going on with. Harry looked up at him and saw a tear trickling down Dumbledore's face into his long silver beard. Chapter 38. The Second War begins. He who must not be named returns. In a brief statement Friday night, Minister of Magic Cornelius Fudge confirmed that he who must not be named has returned to this country and is active once more.
It is with great regret that I must confirm that the wizard styling himself as Lord, well, you know who I mean, is alive and among us again,
said Fudge, looking tired and flustered as he addressed reporters.
It is with almost equal regret that we report the mass revolt of the Dementors of Azkaban, who have shown themselves averse to continuing in the Ministry's employ. We believe that the Dementors are currently taking direction from Lord Thingy. We urge the magical population to remain vigilant. The Ministry is currently publishing guides to elementary home and personal defense that will be delivered free to all wizarding homes within the coming month.
The minister's statement was met with dismay and alarm from the wizarding community, which as recently as last Wednesday was receiving ministry assurances that there was
no truth whatsoever in these persistent rumors that you know who is operating amongst us once more.
Details of the events that led to the ministry turnaround are still hazy, though it is believed that he who must not be named and a select band of followers, known as Death Eaters, gained entry to the Ministry of Magic itself on Thursday evening. Albus Dumbledore, newly reinstated headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, was unavailable for comment last night. He has insisted for a year that you-know-who was not dead, as was widely hoped and believed, but recruiting followers once more for a fresh attempt to seize power. Meanwhile, the boy who lived—
There you are, Harry. I knew they'd drag you into it somehow,
said Hermione, looking over the top of the paper at him. They were in the hospital wing. Harry was sitting on the end of Ron's bed, and they were both listening to Hermione read the front page of the Sunday Prophet. Ginny, whose ankle had been mended in a trice by Madame Pomfrey, was curled up at the foot of Hermione's bed. Neville, whose nose had likewise been returned to its normal size and shape, was in a chair between the two beds, and Luna, who had dropped in to visit, clutching the latest edition of the Quibbler, was reading the magazine upside down and apparently not taking in a word Hermione was saying. He's the boy who lived again now, though, isn't he? Said Ron darkly. Not such a show-off maniac anymore, eh? He helped himself to a handful of chocolate frogs from the immense pile on his bedside cabinet, threw a few to Harry, Ginny, and Neville, and ripped off the wrapper of his own with his teeth. There were still deep welts on his forearms where the brain's tentacles had wrapped around him. According to Madame Pomfrey, thoughts could leave deeper scarring than almost anything else, though since she had started applying copious amounts of Dr. Ubley's oblivious unction, there seemed to be some improvement.
Yes, they're very complimentary about you now, Harry,
said Hermione, now scanning down the article.
A lone voice of truth, perceived as unbalanced, yet never wavered in his story, forced to bear ridicule and slander. Said Hermione, frowning. I notice they don't mention the fact that it was them doing all the ridiculing and slandering, though.
She winced slightly and put a hand to her ribs. The curse Dolohov has used on her, though less effective than it would have been had he been able to say the incantation aloud, had nevertheless caused, in Madame Pomfrey's words, quite enough damage to be going on with. Hermione was having to take 10 different types of potion every day, and, although she was improving greatly, was already bored with the hospital wing.
You know whose last attempt to take over, pages 2 to 4. What the ministry should have told us, page 5. Why nobody listened to Albus Dumbledore, pages 6 to 8. Exclusive interview with Harry Potter, page 9. Well, said Hermione, folding up the newspaper and throwing it aside, it's certainly given them lots to write about. And that interview with Harry isn't exclusive. It's the one that was in the Quibbler months ago.
Daddy sold it to them, said Luna vaguely, turning a page of the Quibbler. He got a very good price for it, too, so we're going to go on an expedition to Sweden this summer and see if we can catch a crumplehorn snorkack. Hermione seemed to struggle with herself for a moment, then said,
That sounds lovely.
Ginny caught Harry's eye and looked away quickly, grinning.
So, anyway,
said Hermione, sitting up a little straighter and wincing again.
What's going on in school?
Well, Flitwick's got rid of Fred and George's swamp, said Ginny. He did it in about 3 seconds, but he left a tiny patch under the window, and he's roped it off.
Why?
Said Hermione, looking startled. Oh, he just said it was a really good bit of magic, said Ginny, shrugging. I think he left it as a monument to Fred and George, said Ron, through a mouthful of chocolate. They sent me all these, you know, he told Harry, pointing at the small mountain of frogs beside him. Must be doing all right out of that joke shop, eh? Hermione looked rather disapproving and asked,
So, has all the trouble stopped now Dumbledore's back? Yes, said Neville. Everything's settled right back down again.
I suppose Filch is happy, is he? Asked Ron, propping a chocolate frog card featuring Dumbledore against his water jug. Not at all, said Ginny. He's really, really miserable, actually. She lowered her voice to a whisper. He keeps saying Umbridge was the best thing that ever happened to Hogwarts. All 6 of them looked around. Professor Umbridge was lying in a bed opposite them, gazing up at the ceiling. Dumbledore had strode alone into the forest to rescue her from the centaurs. How he had done it? How he had emerged from the trees supporting Professor Umbridge without so much as a scratch on him, nobody knew, and Umbridge was certainly not telling. Since she had returned to the castle, she was not, as far as any of them knew, uttered a single word. Nobody really knew what was wrong with her either. Her usually neat, mousy hair was very untidy, and there were bits of twig and leaf in it, but otherwise she seemed to be quite unscathed.
Madame Pomfrey said she's just in shock, whispered Hermione.
Sulking more like, said Ginny.